finally, for our last session of the day, I would like to welcome to the stage the host of last night's FOSI Awards, Robert Traynham, with the Bipartisan Policy Center, Comcast Newsmakers, and a frequent MSNBC contributor, in conversation with Alexander Macgillivray, Deputy Chief Technology Officer at the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy.
It is indeed my pleasure and a distinct honor to introduce our newsmaker this afternoon, who is the Deputy Chief Technology Officer at the White House, Alex Macgillivray. He has effectually given me permission to call him AMAC.
Sure.
So nevertheless, I know our time is very limited, and of course we most likely will have some time for questions, particularly on social media after this event. But you know, Alex, what I wanted to do first is kind of talk about you as a person, if you will. I know that you graduated from Harvard Law School. I know that you were chief counsel over at Google.
I was chief counsel over at Twitter.
At Twitter.
At Google, just one of the counsels.
Just one of the counsels at Google. But nevertheless, you have a very distinguished background. Walk us through why this work that you do is so important and what brought you to the White House.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's awesome to be at FOSI again. It's great to see friendly faces in the audience. Also amazing to follow Ms. Prabhu. It's incredible how much she's accomplished. The other thing that I love about following her, and there's a lot to hate because how do you really follow a presentation like that? But the thing to love about it is that she's a classic representation of this FOSI audience in that she has so many different skill sets from different disciplines and brings them all to bear on the problem, which is also one of the really fun things about my current job. But what I've done over the last 10 years is work at really Google and then Twitter and then now the White House, always working on similar problems, sort of technology and technology policy problems, and trying to find more and more dedicated people who have this cross-disciplinary type of background to be able to bring their discipline to bear on the particular problem.
Sure. You know, it's interesting, Alex or AMAC, is that I think it's appropriate to talk about cybersecurity in the context of online safety here at the FOSI context or summit. And I think it's also important to put it in context. You know, obviously breaking news coming out of Paris, we still do not know all of the details with how that horrible incident happened. But some of the things that we know is that it appears that the terrorists were using encrypted some type of data that we didn't know about or hasn't known about. I know this is not the purpose of this talk, but I do think it's important to talk about it in the context of online safety in general. Any just generic feedback that you'd like to talk about in reference to Paris and cybersecurity in general?
Yeah, I mean, mostly in terms of the Parisian attacks, where at least I am is in the process of trying to think about them and internalize what's happened. I've spent time in France, and it's a horrible tragedy. I don't think on the types of conclusions that people are trying to draw from the attacks.
Way too premature.
It seems like it's really soon, and that there's still a lot of information developing on the ground. So I wouldn't really go there. In terms of cybersecurity more broadly, one of the things that we've noticed, and certainly you see problems within cybersecurity, both in the federal government and also out in the world. And so you see a new hack announced almost every day. And the thing that we've so far been able to do a pretty good job of as a society is become terrified of it and become worried about it. We haven't had as much of a push into what are the solutions to this problem, how do we empower people to take better care of their own cybersecurity.
Can I stop you there for a second? 'Cause you brought up something that we should probably talk about, and that is the perceived or understood hack that China did with OPM. A couple of months ago, and it appears, and you don't need to talk about that specifically, but it just appears that there's also a sense of complacency with us as a society. Would you agree with that assumption, or is that not accurate, based on what you just said, with us always being slightly paranoid, and those are my words, not yours, with respect to a cyber attack?
Yeah, so first of all, with respect to OPM, I don't think there has been an administration position on who is responsible for that. But the bigger issue there is I don't see the complacency at all. Mm-hmm. What I see is people who want to do better and want to improve cybersecurity, but maybe don't have the tools or the things to do that. My parents, for example, have had cybersecurity incidents, and they ask, well, what should we do, right? And a lot of the times the technology for them to use is quite complicated, and the types of things we tell people can be even contradictory. Sometimes we say, change your password all the time. Don't change your password. Use different passwords on every site, but keep them all in your head. Don't write them down, right? There's a whole bunch of different advice that we give to people. And we don't have this straightforward, here are the few things that we think are good ideas for people to do. We also haven't, as a society, we haven't invested as much in the security of our tools as we have in the features and innovation in them.
Why do you think that's the case? Two things. One, to go back to your earlier point, you're absolutely correct. I mean, there's often this contradictory advice in terms of what you're supposed to do with your personal information and your passwords and stuff. So there does not appear to be a clear set of standards or roadmap that Americans can follow, A, and that's your first point. And then B, to my question and second point is, what can we do as a society? Do we need to manage up to our government leaders and say, we're looking for some roadmaps here, we need some guideposts, leaders please help us? Or is it the private sector that should lead that conversation?
I think the big thing there is it's still relatively early in this expansion in the internet and in all of us using it. It used to be used by a much smaller group of people with very similar motivations. We now have billions of people using it. It's still early in that. So I think we're still trying to figure it out. And there are some resources out there already. I'd point to the FTC as a really a great place for people to look. But this is still a thing that is developing. So part of what we're trying to understand is what are the types of things, what are the types of best practices we can highlight from the private sector, and how do we give them even more oxygen to be able to become more successful and translate into things that will make a difference in everyday people's lives online.
I want to transition now to kids, and my understanding is you are a big proponent of some type of cybersecurity badge, if you will, maybe that could be issued by the Boy Scouts. Assuming that that's true, how would that work? If I am a Cub Scout or a Boy Scout, on my honor, I would do my best to serve my country. How would you administer something like that? What does that look like?
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far about specifics. I think that one of the things that I've learned from FOSI over the years, and I think the new study is a great example of this, is that kids know this stuff a lot better than we give them credit. And so the one question I have is, and this is really a question for the FOSI audience, is how do we harness the knowledge that kids have about security and cybersecurity and make it so that when grown-up kids are going home for Thanksgiving or the like, that we actually get from them good practices to be taught to their parents, and vice versa. Right? I think there are a lot of parents who have good things to teach their kids here too. And that's one of the things that I think FOSI really brings to this conversation, is that it's not just someone who knows, sort of telling somebody who doesn't, and it's in that sort of one way. But this is a conversation that we can have and that can make both parents and children better on cybersecurity.
So that's a perfect segue to something I want to talk about, which is the Colorado, sexting scandal that I'm sure all of you have heard about. But just to kind of double back for a few moments about the two-way communication conversation that should happen between parents and their children. I'm sure many parents are saying, look, I'm the parent, I'm the one, I have wisdom, presumably. I should be the one that should be educating my kid about what not to do. It just feels so unnatural for my 13-year-old kid to be able to tell me what's right and what's wrong in terms of internet protocol. You disagree with that?
I'm not sure that unnatural is the right word. The best, I struggle with this as a parent too, right? The best conversations that I have with my kids are two-way, where I am listening and they are telling me about what they're experiencing, and I'm trying to help them with my experience. But I also understand that they're having different experiences from me. So while I don't think that the conversation is always that two-way, there is a lot more that you gain from having that conversation and from really understanding what it is your kids are looking for. One of the things that I always get as advice as a parent is, answer the question that your child asks, as opposed to trying to fill in from your own fears and experiences. And that's been helpful to me.
And it's interesting because I know Stephen talks about this a lot, and that is kids as creators. And I'm not a parent, but speaking on behalf of most parents out there, when you hear that word, or that terminology, that nomenclature, what does that mean to you as kids as creators?
Yeah, obviously we love that idea in the CTO's office, because what we found is that there's There's all of this wonderful work to make it so that students have a better experience with science, technology, engineering, mathematics, that they have this great experience that leads to lifelong learning there. And that ability to do it hands-on, to actually be a creator, is a huge part of that. So that's a great thing, and part of what the administration has been trying to do there is make sure that kids of different income levels, different neighborhoods, actually have the type of instruction and then also the type of materials and infrastructure to be able to be creators in this connected age.
Sure. I remember in college, there used to be this ongoing debate that the internet was a privilege, not a right. It just was, I graduated in the 90s, and there was just big conversation. And now I think the country has evolved where clearly the internet is something that is essential just for everyday life in every way, shape, and form. And so with that, there is an ongoing conversation about the digital divide, and between literally the haves and the have-nots. And it's an even larger conversation, as you know, on the presidential stage when it comes to income inequality and so forth. There's a lot of people out there that are saying, here it is 2015, but if you go in some rural areas, and even, quite frankly, some inner city areas, there's a building that houses kids on an everyday basis called a school that is still either A, on dial-up, and or B, has very little internet or no internet at all. So my question for you, AMAC, is how do we keep having this conversation, but there doesn't appear to be a solution. And so where's the disconnect here?
Yeah, I think there you're wrong in that the way the president has tackled this is with the Connect Ed and just announced Connect Home initiative, where there's multiple billions of dollars being invested to make sure that schools not only have connection, but have broadband connection, so that it's not just, we're recognizing that just straight dial-up is no longer enough. We really need to get to a space where we have broadband connections. New investments and private partnerships that have brought Wi-Fi to schools, that have made it so that schools are actually places that will have first-class connectivity. And then the most recent announcement was called Connect Home, where we're working with HUD to really bring that type of connectivity to the homes of kids that are, especially in the lower income neighborhoods, where you're getting people the ability to take their work from school, do the homework at home, go to the library if the connectivity is there, but make it so that we aren't in this position of haves and have-nots, particularly with respect to the digital technology, which has so much promise to be able to level the playing field, to be able to give people the types of instruction that they need, and to be able to really allow people to get these opportunities for 21st century work, for becoming part of really society, as you described it.
Sadly, we only have a few moments left, and I would, as I mentioned before, we should talk about it, and that is the huge scandal, dilemma, whatever you want to call it, in Colorado, where a lot of, I don't know how many it is, but a lot of kids have been exchanging nude photographs of themselves and of their peers behind an app that parents and teachers did not know about. And my understanding is the only reason why this came up is because one of the children went to a school administrator, her principal, and said, hey, just FYI, this is going on. And then obviously they found this unfortunate situation. So my question to you is that alarming to you? And I think I know the answer to that as a parent and as a human being, but is that alarming to you? And then secondly, how do we tackle that from a parent standpoint, but also from a child standpoint?
Yeah, I certainly don't claim to be an expert on the right way to tackle that from either a parent or a child standpoint. Certainly is alarming, and one of the things that I think it talks to is this moment that we're at where the technology is evolving very rapidly, and where both parents and children are struggling to keep up with that change. But I think there are much smarter people in the audience on that particular question.
One of the things, my parents often will say this, their children are now adults, but they all say, I can't imagine being a parent today, meaning in the context of having a young person, because I just can't keep up. It just seems to be almost every single day or every other day there's this new app or a new Twitter or a new Google or something else that is coming on board. And so my parents have said that their younger friends that are parents are saying they just feel overwhelmed by just policing, and that's probably not the right word, but policing it or enforcing or just keeping on top of what their kids are seeing on the internet. But secondly, They're also struggling with what is the appropriate balance between letting your child be a child and growing up and experimenting and exploring, but also clearly having those boundaries in place. Where's the happy medium? And two, if there is one, and two, where can parents go, obviously besides FOSI.org, to get information about this?
Well, I think, again, I am a relatively new parent myself, so I wouldn't say that I'm an expert on what the happy medium is. I'm struggling with my kids on it. But I would say that one of the things that we're trying to do as an administration is to lay down some of the ground rules so that the parents don't have to be thinking about absolutely everything. So particularly around student privacy was something that the president spoke at the FTC, first time a president had gone to the FTC in 80 years, and spoke very directly about the idea that when a student is at school and is using educational resources, that the parents shouldn't have to be worried about targeting. They shouldn't have to be worried about the kid being profiled. They shouldn't have to worry about the kid's information being used for purposes that are entirely not educational. There should be some ground rules so that the parents don't have to be completely cognizant of every single thing in the whole world. And that, to me, seems like a right way to think about these problems, is that we've always looked to government to have some ability to set a baseline that helps all of us interact easier with each other, including our kids. And that this is a place, again, where having some ability for the government to say, these are at least the ground rules, and then above that, we're going to look to parents to be responsible is useful.
We know we have a presidential election coming up in a couple of months. We know that all of us will have a say on who our next leader will be. In the last, 15, 16 months in the administration, what are some of the things that you all want to accomplish within your department, within your division?
I think one of the big things that we haven't talked about on stage yet that I'm focused on is President Obama has been very cognizant of this moment in history where we are more and more technically connected. Technology is more and more a part of everyone's life, and the delivery of policies is more and more reliant on technology. And certainly you saw that with the healthcare.gov rollout, but there have been plenty of other examples where that meld of policy and technology is important. And so one of the things that the president has done is brought a whole bunch of really talented technologists into government. It's almost like when the economists came to government a number of years ago. And so trying to ensure that that type of, again, cross-disciplinary, making sure that the technologists and the implementers of the idea are at the table, trying to make sure that that particular thing is something that survives across government. And my favorite person on this is Haley Dickerson. Haley and Mikey Dickerson. Mikey Dickerson says, shipping is the Haley Van Dyke. Mikey Dickerson says shipping is the strategy, right? The more we can make government services easier for people to use and more focused on people and get them out there, the more we can actually ensure that this type of technology-forward government can continue through administration.
It's interesting, when you say that, it harkens back to '93 when Al Gore was tasked with the whole reinventing government under the first Clinton administration. And so the question becomes, from a legacy standpoint, whether or not whomever the next president is going to be is going to continue that legacy that you just mentioned, that the current president wants us to cement. Are you optimistic, no matter who the next president is, that the same gravitas, the same sense of urgency that this president rightfully has done, put on online safety and so forth, do you think that's going to carry forward in 2016 and beyond?
Yeah, no, I think I'm optimistic for two reasons. First of all, the idea that your government services should be good is not a Republican or a Democratic idea. It's just an idea, and it's the right idea, right? So that's one. And then two, I think people have gotten completely accustomed to the 21st century services that are being provided to them by everybody from the nonprofit to their kids' blog to Amazon or Google, these big companies. And they're used to having these services being focused on delivering what they want. And so that focus on the person that is actually receiving the service, again, I don't think that's something that the public is going to let any future administration stray from. I think we're going to have to continue to be focused on that.
We got about 20 seconds left. Any final thoughts?
No, I'm just glad that we're not both wearing kilts, because that would have been very bad. I also
one would think.
Scottish descent. That would be very bad. And I just again want to thank FOSI for having us.
Indeed. Well, thank you very much. for coming over from the White House. Really appreciate it. And one just administrative comment. For those of you who would love to continue this conversation, or you have some questions that, quite frankly, you thought of that I should have asked, feel free to find AMAC where on social media?
So it's AMAC OSTP, AMAC OSTP, Office of Science and Technology Policy, where I work, on Twitter. So AMAC OSTP, if you just tweet me a question. I have a meeting right after this, but I will spend some time tonight and respond to as many as I can.
Thank you very much. Round of applause for AMAC, please.
Thank you.